You're listening to the Packernet Podcast Network.
What's going on, U.S. Cellular customers? I've got good news, so don't hit skip, at least not yet. I'm talking about their special customer event, Us Days. What is Us Days? It means exclusive offers just for their customers, just to say thanks, like $1,200 off any phone, plus $300 off any tablet. No, I didn't just misread that. They must really like you. Us Days at U.S. Cellular, exclusive offers just for you, just to say thank you. Right now, U.S. Cellular customers get $1,200 off any phone, plus $300 off any tablet. Terms apply.
You're a podcast listener, and this is a podcast ad. Reach great listeners like yourself with podcast advertising from Libsyn Ads. Choose from hundreds of top podcasts offering host endorsements, or run a reproduced ad like this one across thousands of shows to reach your target audience with Libsyn Ads. Go to libsynads.com now. That's LIBSYN ads.com.
Actually, it's the lead play in our offense. We ask our YN or a tight end to open up somewhere between 6 feet and 9 feet, get an isolation with the linebacker. Tell the tackle to take the defensive end if he's over him. If he's not, to drive down on the first man to his inside. If the YN has the linebacker taken out, he cuts inside. If the YN has the linebacker in, he comes all the way around. If you look at this play, what we're trying to get is a seal here and a seal here. Try to run this play in the alley.
All right, what's up, guys? Welcome into Packers Total Access. My name is Clayton. You can check us out on Packernet.com. Find me on Twitter at Packers_access. Email us, PackersTotalAccess@gmail.com. You can text us 865-658-5824. Joined alongside Jacob in Wisconsin. I think Emilio's out date mocking it tonight. I know Tim's on his way either to or from Milwaukee currently. And Jacob, I understand you got some stuff you got to take care of this evening too, but I appreciate you jumping on for a few minutes, man.
Yep, of course.
Absolutely. Well, what we're going to do is continue to dive into the talk with Greg Cosell over on Wildy and Tausch. And you guys know we played some clips the other day from Greg Cosell talking Packers with Ross Tucker. You may hear some similar takes in these three audios here, but we're just going to kind of dive into what he had to say about the defense, more specifically Xavier McKinney signing, Javon Bullard, and Quay Walker, how he may or may not fit into this new defense. And then we may get into a little bit of Josh Jacobs talk too. So when Jacob hops off here, if we've got a lot of time to fill, I may go ahead and break down the New Year's Eve matchup there against the Vikings. So we'll hit all that for you guys and gals this evening. I know the chat's already filling up. Appreciate y'all swinging through. It's amazing that we get this many people that hop on a Saturday night, man. Just wild to me. All right, Jacob. So you want to get into these audios, man? You ready to jump right in? Do you have anything else you wanted to hit on first?
No, man, let's go. I'm ready.
All right, here we go. So, again, this was on Wildy and Tausch. It was Mark Tauscher, Packer Hall of Famer, former right tackle, obviously played for the Wisconsin Badgers as well. They had Jesse Nelson sitting in for Jason Wildy, and they had the GOAT, Greg Cosell, on, and they just kind of asked him about the defense and this new half-league look here. Let's see what the civilian GOAT, as Ross Tucker refers to him as, Greg Cosell has to say about the defense.
Anybody could disagree with that. I think if Justin Jefferson's available, you want him on your football team. So flipping over to the other side of the ball in defense, and it has been the last couple seasons, it's always, Joe Barry's defense. It plays too soft. They go halfly from a head coach from Boston College comes in. It's all the talk this offseason here in Green Bay has been about the aggressive nature that you're going to play. What are you expecting to see, and what did you see last year with maybe some of the breakdowns, especially in that Carolina game when Carolina couldn't move the ball against anybody and they go in the fourth quarter? What did you see from Joe Barry's defense that left you, I guess, maybe wanting more?
Well, I mean, maybe it's better to talk about what we think we might get now, because obviously it's a whole different deal. Mm-hmm. You know, the past is now the past.
It's true.
And obviously they had.
I don't know if you caught on to that, but Greg Cosell knows football inside and out. That was Greg Cosell's way of saying they blew a bunch of coverages.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure he knows that the fan base doesn't want to hear that. They just want to hear this was all Joe Barry's fault and we're going to fix it with Jeff Hafley. So anyway, I just thought as soon as I heard that, I was like, good move there, Greg. Good move.
Address their defense early in the draft. I mean, that was a major deal. Obviously, they did draft the tackle, who I guess is going to be a guard, Jordan Morgan, and probably should be a guard because of the arm length issue. But they did draft in the second round Cooper from A&M, who was the most explosive linebacker in this draft class. They drafted Bullard out of Georgia, who is a really intriguing player. His junior year, his second to last year, he played slot corner. Last year, he played safety. He's a really savvy, smart player. My guess is he'll play safety. They signed Xavier McKinney, who's a really multi-dimensional player at safety. I think they have a lot more options now with their players. Because someone like Cooper, for instance, you talk about Hafley being aggressive, and that's the talk. Cooper was a great blitzer at A&M last year. He's an explosive guy. So they're looking for more explosiveness, I think, on the defensive side of the ball. We'll see how it all plays out. I think that there's certain players that stood out to me on tape last year. I thought Carl Brooks, who was a sixth-round pick,
yes,
kind of an unknown quantity, he really stood out on tape. So you have to figure he'll improve. I think they expect Van Ness to be able to win one-on-one, whether it's on the edge or inside. Now, this will be a different-looking defense, so we'll see where he plays the majority of his snaps. I'm sure they're expecting Wyatt, who was a first-round pick 2 years ago, to become much more of a force as a pass rusher. In an ideal world, you'd love to be able to pressure with 4 because defense is a numbers game. If you have 7 in coverage, you have an advantage. If you can get there with 4 and impact the quarterback, that's what you want. If you can't, you've got to bring a 5th, and then that limits your options in coverage.
Greg.
All right, so obviously there's a lot to unpack there, Jacob. Really cool hearing him talk about the all the additions and everything. Talking about what we may or may not see. Did you notice that he put that plug in there for the 4-man pass rush, right? Just bring 4. That's the goal. I think many people, when they hear aggressive defense, they think we're just going to be blitzing the house. If you go back and watch Boston College, that's not what he did at Boston College either, he being Jeff Hafley. So big takeaway there. I know it was a lot of information there, but Greg Cosell sounds optimistic about this defense this year, doesn't he?
Yeah. And like you talked about, man, that 4 front pass rush, it's something that I think we just have that group of guys that are equipped. We're not used to seeing Preston and Gary necessarily putting their hand down in the dirt, but that interior group, like he talked about, man, between Devontae Wyatt, which if you want to just call him a pass rush specialist, I guess, okay, cool. We've got Slayton and we got Brooks and we got Wooden. And we also have a couple other guys that maybe could possibly slide inside. And I like the fact that he called out Carl Brooks because this just seems to be a common denominator is that Carl Brooks, no matter who evaluates him, is like, hey, this guy can play pretty much anywhere on the defensive line. And we forget, not to bring it up to beat a dead horse again, but like the dude was a freak in college and he played on the D end. He was, very large. D end. He had one of the best PFF grades in general of anybody in that graduating class. So that's just it's encouraging. And you see a guy like Jeff Hafley that has all these puzzle pieces to put together. I'm not going to sit here and slander Joe Barry. I think that maybe he had some talent that he didn't know. I feel like he didn't know where to be really decisive. I feel like that he was kind of dictating his play a lot on public opinion. And that sounds crazy to think that maybe wasn't the fact, but I think it was. And
me too, man.
I don't know how to delineate against that. Cause I'd hope that Matt LaFleur would say to Half, just be like, hey dude, stop reading Twitter. Don't look at that. If things do this, don't get freaked out. Like I would hope that you wouldn't have to say that to an NFL ready coach or an NFL coach, but I don't know. It seems weird. That whole thing seemed weird. The Green Bay Packers have had so much on paper talent for the last 10, 15 years. You know what I mean? And we just can't put it together. And that I don't understand why. I don't understand why we can't get a group of men to get together and just be like, hey, we're going to be a good defense. For whatever reason, we haven't done it. I do believe that Jeff Hafley will be the one that gets these guys to get on the same page and play together. I believe that. I hope that I am not wrong. So we'll see.
Yeah. And everybody's got their own opinion on why it hasn't worked out for so long, multiple coordinators.
What's yours? What's yours, really?
Yeah, I've been pretty vocal about it. I think that they're keying in on these crazy talented athletes. It's
potential talent.
We want that fast, quick, strong, athletic, good size athlete in the first round. And you know, when people say we've invested a lot into this defense, we're talking about first round picks, right? That's what we're talking about. We're talking about the fact that you've spent so many first round picks on defensive players. But when you go back and look, like for example, Brian Branch, I think everyone would agree Brian Branch was worthy of a first round pick. Now you guys heard us going into that draft. He was one of my favorite players. Guys, he still to this day has the lowest missed tackle percentage of any player in the PFF era, right? Meaning he misses fewer tackles than all cornerbacks, safeties, linebackers, and defensive linemen of anyone in the PFF era. And you're looking at that, you're going, why, go get him in the first round. Well, he's not worthy of a first round. Why? Because his measurables. Got it. Detroit drafts him. What happens? He's a stud. Now, let's hope that Bullard is that guy. That's just one example. That's one example. Another one I'll tell you this year.
Kyle Hamilton was another one.
Kyle Hamilton. And again, and people immediately say he went before we picked. I know. I'm simply saying that you could tell he was, I don't want to say generational talent, but I had him as the second best prospect in the draft. And I know people side-eyed me because he run a wonky 40-yard dash. He run it sideways, right? Everybody's like, oh, this guy, no way. He's arguably the best safety in the game now. I was simply saying that would be worth trading up a few picks to grab someone like that. Why wouldn't they do it? 40-yard dash, And again, we're kind of speaking for Goody here, and we're not saying that we're completely accurate in that regard. It's just totally obvious to me that they go for extremely high upside in the first round. You ever wondered why have we kind of missed in the first round to a certain extent, but we always hit in the second round? Why is that? I think it's because they key a little less on that. Now, Luke Musgrave, Tucker Kraft, those dudes were athletic freaks too, don't get me wrong. But you're willing to take your foot off the throttle a little bit in the second round and go, okay, who's the best ball player rather than who's got the most upside type thing. So that's what I think it is. I could be completely wrong, but that's kind of how I see, Eric Stokes. We showed the article. What was he, number 15? Fastest players in the NFL. And he was like one of the top corners. And it's like, why hasn't he panned out? He's got all the athletic ability in the world. We've showed you over and over on tape. He's getting beat in man coverage. Well, he's fast. Shouldn't he be able to keep up? Fast doesn't translate to good technique in man coverage. Fast doesn't translate to you getting your head around and tracking the ball in man coverage, right? All those things that truly matter. And again, it's a bit of the thing that pisses me off the most about Eric Stokes, I'm just going to be honest. We're in year 3, right? No, year 4. And we're still going, well, he's been hurt. We really don't know what we got. The reality is he's played quite a bit of ball. He's missed a lot of games too, don't get me wrong. But he's played enough to look and go, PFF in the 60s, right? Has a hard time tracking the ball. We showed several games here this past season where he got, beaten man coverage. We showed it over and over. Yep, that's on Stokes right there, right? And you got all these things that kind of get compiled in, and it's like, okay, rookie year in the 60s. Ever since then, he's graded out in the 50s. What else? You know what I'm saying? I personally don't expect him to come out this year and just bang, he's going to grade out in the 70s or 80s, and all of a sudden he's a stud corner. I hope it happens. It's possible, but I'm telling you, I wouldn't bet the John Deere on it. Me personally, So, and again, I'm not the dog on those guys, but Jacob, that's the answer. That's the only answer I can come up with. That's the one commonality. We're now in the third defensive coordinator, right? So you go from Dom to Mike Pettin to Joe Barry, now the fourth, right? If it doesn't work out this time, you really got to step back and go, okay, like this year, we took Edgerrin Cooper. Why did we take Edgerrin Cooper over Junior Colson? Because Edgerrin Cooper has higher upside. He's a physical freak. There's no denying that. And if he puts it together, this dude, the sky could be the limit, right? Well, Junior Colson didn't have as much athletic ability, but if you watch him on tape, he seems way more intelligent, and he's a way better tackler in that regard. Like if you go back to 2022 with Edgerrin Cooper and watch that tape compared to 2023, it's night and day difference. Junior Colson was just stud. Why did he get drafted after Edgerrin Cooper? Because there's not as much upside. That's my opinion. I'm glad we got Cooper, don't get me wrong. And Greg Cosell, this is a perfect example. Greg Cosell in his draft breakdown said Edgerrin Cooper is the best linebacker in the draft, but day one, Junior Colson will be better than him. And people will go, what the hell does that mean? It means exactly what he said. Day one, Junior Colson is probably going to be more effective. But if Edgerrin Cooper puts it together with all that athletic ability, he's hands down the best linebacker in this draft. If that makes sense. So, yeah, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how the defense kind of adjusts, like I said, to how they approach everything. I'm with you though. The fact that he mentioned Carl Brooks, Jacob, like name one person who has said something negative about Carl Brooks. I'll wait.
Yeah.
There's not been one, has there?
No, and that's what's crazy is that honestly, between him, Wooden, and Wyatt, we kind of, me personally, I lump them into kind of like, are they the same type of player? I think that's unfair because Wyatt is definitely a D tackle that has pass rush specialist, I guess, would be the knack for him. And with Wooden, and I think Wooden is maybe the most underrated. I think for sure the most underrated guy in that group where he hasn't done anything wrong. You know what I mean? Like right. It's just that Brooks has been so good and then Wyatt has been so flashy. And Slayton's just so big. Like you get kind of lost within those guys that are in the DT era of where we're at now with the Green Bay defense. And that being said, man, I really do. I have a lot of hopes for Carl Brooks. I really do think that he is going to be more of a chess piece. But I think Wyatt, again, is a guy that we should not sleep on. Like he was some of those metrics we looked at. He was right up there with really good D tackles as far as the pass rush win rate. So I'm hopeful that this defense is going to take a really drastic step forward because they have to. If they don't, then it's right. Like you talked about. Yeah. There's no excuses anymore. Just
and the gauge is there. 12th in scoring defense last year. Right. I need to double check that, but I'm pretty sure that's correct. If you slide backwards from 12th, I'm going to be over here like this because we've seen it get better every year. It didn't get much better last year than the year before, but it did get slightly better. The run defense actually got better statistically. It looks so bad because, Jacob, when they're bad, they're bad. Last year I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But when they were good, it was like, okay, this is borderline top 10 defense. It really is. And that's where the DVOA nuts come out. And I'm going, okay, go ahead and take your weighted whatever. It drove me crazy. Let's go to the chat, though, man. We got a ton of people in here. Dick in Gulfport said, I watched last night's show delayed and laughed about Terrell Buckley. We used to have a Terrell Buckley doll with tear off limbs. When he made bad play, we tear off a limb and throw them across the room. I'm telling you, man, most Packer fans that watch Buckley, they felt like he was a disappointment. That dude ended up going on to have 50 career interceptions. That's just wild to me. It was like 10 or 12 years in the league, too. And now he's coaching football, has been for a while. I love what M. Smitty said, fire Cosell, winky emoji. So we'll just blame Cosell today. Smitty says, a beautiful day here in South Dakota, I bet it is, right? Beautiful day in South Dakota. What's that?
I thought it was San Diego.
See, I thought so too. That's
nah, it's South. Smitty don't live in San Diego. All right.
Said beautiful day here in South Dakota to grill up a bone-in pork chops, brown sugar glazed pineapple and veggies while talking Packers. That's what I'm talking about.
Well, look who it is.
We got Carly in the house. Carly, how are you?
I'm doing all right. Long time no see. How are you guys?
We're doing well. Just in here talking a little Packers. We got, people in the chat making us hungry, talking about what they're having for dinner. But Coach Lynn said, I really like Kobe Wooden. He could be in for a big year. There's many people that are big on Kobe. I'm not as high on Kobe Wooden as most, but I know this coming out of college and out of training camp, it sounded like he had a pretty good camp. So maybe this will kind of unlock him this year, Coach. Ron Samble says, I I think actually it sounds like Cosell feels the Packers are setting Hafley up for success. I think that's what he's saying too, because he plugged a lot of people that he really liked in the draft, so I would agree with that. Coach Lynn says, I feel like that philosophy for the Packers has changed this season with the picks they got: Williams, Oladapo, Hooper, Bullard. Yeah, that's a very, very good point. Maybe they did kind of change up the philosophy a little bit there, right? Because those guys wasn't athletic freaks for sure. Chris Nichols says, you're totally right about that, Clayton. They need to chill a bit in the first round and improve the hit rate. Just like a higher floor type guy is all I'm saying, right? And Angus McHaggis hit the nail on the head here. He said, Enigbare, a good example. I was screaming to take him in round 3 that he had fallen enough. They get him in the 5th, and the reason for his slide was poor measurables. I remember being on the live draft party with Ryan, and Enigbare for 2 straight rounds, Jacob, was my best prospect. And I'm going, please take him. When they finally took him, I was fist pumping, but I was also like, what the heck took so long? And again, I don't think anybody would disagree. Maybe you guys disagree. I mean, he pretty solid 5th round pick up to this point, don't you think?
What's going on, U.S. Cellular customers? I've got good news, so don't hit skip, at least not yet. I'm talking about their special customer event, Us Days. What is Us Days? It means exclusive offers just for their customers, just to say thanks, like $1,200 off any phone plus $300 off any tablet. No, I didn't just misread that. They must really like you. Us Days at U.S. Cellular, exclusive offers just for you, just to say thank you. Right now, U.S. Cellular customers get $1,200 off any phone plus $300 off any tablet. Terms apply.
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo Concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
You're a podcast listener, and this is a podcast ad. Reach great listeners like yourself with podcast advertising from Libsyn Ads. Choose from hundreds of top podcasts offering host endorsements, or run a reproduced ad like this one across thousands of shows to reach your target audience with Libsyn Ads. Go to libsynads.com now. That's LIBSYN ads.com. You're a podcast listener, and this is a podcast ad. Reach great listeners like yourself with podcast advertising from Libsyn Ads. Choose from hundreds of top podcasts offering host endorsements, or run a reproduced ad like this one across thousands of shows to reach your target audience with Libsyn Ads. Go to libsynads.com now. That's LIBSYN ads.com.
Oh yeah, I mean, we talked about how Enigbare is one of those puzzle pieces that makes our edge class, our edge room group just really substantial, to the point where and plus the fact that the guy was supposed to have his knee broke to a point where they're like, oh, he's going to miss the next year. And then randomly, that was one of the weirdest, rise out of the ashes Phoenix things where they're like, nope. Enigbare is good to go. He's playing on it. He's pivoting off the knee. I don't know, that was cool. It's a good, it's good fake news for once. Good fake news. So for once I was like, oh, awesome. And the fact that he's actually running around and at training camp, I think that's one of those that's one of those puzzle pieces that people think aren't as impactful as they may be. That second team edge defenders between him and LVN, I think that's massive, and people don't think of that. So
no, absolutely, man, I completely agree. And I love what Cosell said, that LVN could potentially play inside. I specifically remember last year going into training camp, the first week of training camp, he said, I thought LVN, Lucas Van Ness, would be a better pick, a better fit playing on the interior in a sub package, meaning your nickel 2-4-5, which is now your nickel 4-2-5. But what I'm hearing out of camp is they see him predominantly as an edge. And when he said it, I'm like, okay, Cosell doesn't just say that stuff just to say it. There's no guesswork there. He spoke to someone in the building who's seen him as an edge, and we've seen it last year, no doubt. So Coach Lynn said Goot drafted football player rather than that high upside. Completely agree. This year it seemed like he did switch it up. Ron Sample says Jordan Morgan doesn't really meet the freak athlete first rounder. Completely agree with that. Just more of that technician type, Many people are comparing him to, like, if you had to say, okay, what style does he play with at left tackle, it was David Bakhtiari, because David Bakhtiari was just an absolute technician. Slow 12 in the chat says Darnell Savage is a great example. Dude ran 4.3, but couldn't tackle consistently, and was always, even though he ran a 4.3, Slow 12, it's like he was late to the point, right? Like late to the mesh point in which you're supposed to intersect the ball, reaching the receiver. It just seemed like he was always a half a step late. And that's the beautiful thing about, like, Kyle Hamilton, other than the size that he had. Kyle Hamilton coming out of Notre Dame, he was always a half a step quicker. He was always in the right spot, and he was always there, like I said, just a half a step faster than the receiver. And that's called playing with your eyes. See, that's what I liked about our boy. God, I've already forgot his name now. Who was the top safety in this year's draft? This just goes to show you, if the Packers don't take somebody, I just move on. But I'm trying to think. Actually, I got my draft board right here. I'll tell you. But he played the same way. It wasn't
Cooper DeJean, or are you talking
Tyler Nubin? Nubin plays with his eyes. That's why I think he set the Minnesota school record for interceptions. He was just always a half a step ahead of everyone. So I think that stuff is very important. Slow 12 says,
hello, Nubin.
Exactly. Slow 12 says Brooks should thrive more so in the 4.3, right? It's hard to say. I don't think it'll hurt him. Carl Brooks is a very quick first step, quick twitch pass rusher, right? You've seen that over and over and over. Like, when he wins, it's typically because he wins off the ball extremely fast, which Ross Tucker, you guys know, one of my favorite podcasters, former offensive lineman, he talked about that. He said a guy can be strong and you can beat him. He said a guy can have pass rush moves and you can beat him. He said, but if they've got that quick first step, you're in for a rough day, right? And that's what Carl Brooks did well. Now, the fact that we're to a one-gap defense with this new 4.3 look, and if we kind of keep it that way in the sub packages, yeah, it should suit him a lot better. I would imagine it would amplify what he's good at. Last comment here, M. Smitty says, don't slander me with that San Diego crap, South Dakota all the way, LOL. So good stuff, man. Enjoy those chops over there, big dog. Carly, if you got anything to add, you just chime in, all right? We're just kind of rolling along here. We got a couple more sound bites from the man Greg Cosell. Jacob, when you got to hop off, you just go, buddy. When you disappear, I'll know you had to go, all right? Not like you had to go to the bathroom, like you had to get off.
I'll ask one question. Carly, have you ever taken the family or thought about taking the family to family night at the Packer Stadium there?
I've thought about it, and this year I think they're old enough that I would really consider it.
And why are you not?
Right now we only have one working vehicle because the transmission in the minivan.
Hey, I understand
totally
that.
gone.
My car decided to die today, so
I guess I'm next in line, man. I'm going to go out here and the work truck's going to be on blocks or something. Everybody's having car problems.
Yeah, so new transmission, $7,000 or more. It's yeah.
That's big. Yeah, we got a work truck right now that sounds like there's a bag of marbles in the transmission, and we laugh every day. We're just like, hey, when it goes, we're just going to pull it right over on the side of the road. We're going to call for a ride, and we ain't even going to pick it back up. Somebody will get it. We're gonna have it, right? We'll leave it right where it's at. So, Coach Lynn says,
I guess that's how they do it down there, huh?
Yeah, Tennessee's a different type of place, at least in Northeast Tennessee. Where Jacob was at down there in Nashville, they're somewhat civilized, but we get up here, we're really, really close to the Appalachian Mountains. So back where I'm from in Kentucky. So yeah, we're just about an hour from my hometown in Kentucky. So there's just enough redneck up here that well, Chewy will tell you, it totally normal to see a car on blocks on the side of the road. Probably was offended. She said, I'm out of here. Coach Lynn says he got drafted to the Giants where they just lost McKinney, who we drafted, the circle of life, LOL. So they got Nubin, and we got Xavier McKinney. I'll tell you this, as much as I love Tyler Nubin, if you say, Clayton, you got to pick Tyler Nubin or Xavier McKinney, I'm picking Xavier McKinney 11 out of 10 times, man.
It's 100%.
Yeah.
Especially for what we paid for.
Right. No doubt. Chewy said this is true. There you go. Told you, man. He's from right down the road here where I live. All right, let's move on to the next one. I don't think there's anything repetitive here, but they asked him specifically, they being Wilde and Tausch. It was obviously Mark Tauscher, Packer Hall of Famer, and Jesse Nelson on the Wilde and Tausch show asked Greg Cosell about Xavier McKinney. He goes on to talk about Javon Bullard and Quay Walker as well. So let's hit this soundbite real quick.
Films joining us on Wilde and Tausch. Xavier McKinney, we know he's good coming in. You mentioned multi-dimensional. What makes Xavier McKinney so good?
Well, McKinney can play on the back end. He can play in the box. He can even line up in the slot at times. He did that a ton at Alabama, and he showed he could do it well. So he can do a lot of different things, as can Bullard, by the way. So now you have two safety. Assuming Bullard ends up starting, you never know with a rookie. My guess is they drafted him to be a starter. So as we talk now in mid to late June, I would assume they'd like McKinney and Bullard to be their starting safeties. They actually drafted another interesting safety in the 5th round, Oladapo from Oregon State. He's a pretty interesting player too. But I think they'd like McKinney and Bullard to be the starters. And now you have versatility at the safety position. Every team would like interchangeable safeties that can do multiple things, be multidimensional in how they're deployed. So I think they have two guys like that, and that really adds options to your defense.
What about Quay Walker? How have you
that real quick? I just want to say that according to my draft board and how we had these safeties lined up, we got Javon Bullard, the number 2 safety in the draft, and I had Katana Oladapo, the number 3 safety in the draft. So we literally got the 2nd and 3rd best safeties in the draft, and we signed the top free agent safety. So that's the other thing. That's what I meant by when I said I bet Joe Barry's at home so mad right now because they literally just completely revamped the defense after they crap canned them, right? So just wanted to point that out, though, that we did get the number 2 and number 3 safety on my draft board, which I'm so excited about Oladapo as well.
Assessed his play up to this point, and what do you expect, or what do you think Green Bay is going to be looking for from him? Because I think fans are kind of saying this defense is going to let him showcase what we saw at Georgia, maybe a little bit more than what we've seen in Green Bay so far.
Yeah, and I think that's critical here. You're right, because Walker's got a ton of physical traits, but hasn't quite been a consistent impact player in his first 2 years in the league. But it's all there within his body. So, again, I don't know what Jeff is going to do exactly, but I think that Walker he's a guy to really keep an eye on because physically and athletically, he should be a really good player. He should be somewhat of an impact player, as much as a stacked backer can be that guy. But again, he can be deployed in certain ways to help in that regard. And I think he's one guy to really look at as this new defense gets installed. And, we see how it goes through training camp and into the early part of the season.
Yeah.
All right, there you go. Coach Lynn asked Clayton, where did you have Evan Williams ranked? I had him as the 16th best safety. That was a pick in this draft where I really scratched my head. I was like, oh man, I felt like there was a lot of players that were better than him. Now we went and watched the highlight reel for what it's worth, and he is a human.
I was hoping you were gonna say it, man. I really was. It's a human meat missile. He's a human meat missile, man.
Evan Williams is that dude that he is a hard hitting safety, a good tackler. The problem is you don't see much of him in coverage. Now, everyone told me the year before he was at Oregon, I can't remember where he played the year before, that his tape was really, really good in coverage the year before. So maybe he's the real deal. But for me, to answer your question, Coach Lynn, I wasn't as high on him. He was 16th. Now, when we watched the highlight reel, though, and to see him hitting guys and see how he almost single-handedly shut down Caleb Williams, because Caleb Williams would look at the first read like he does. First read not open, let me scramble. And Evan Williams was right in his grill as soon as it happened. So, yeah, there you go. That's a good point, too. Angus McHaggis says Williams really helped himself at the Senior Bowl, late riser. And we know that the Packers absolutely love their Senior Bowl guys for sure. So, yeah. Jay Martha in the chat says, I miss the Home Depot music. We all do. That's pretty good. Pretty good. All right. Chris Nichols says, what about Hopper? Not even on the board, I bet. Hopper was another one that was kind of low. But, Jake, give me your take on what he said with Quay Walker. Anything you want to hit on? Let me see if I can find where Hopper was.
With the Quay Walker, situation. I mean, that's a guy that Quay Walker is exactly what you would imagine the Packers defensive coaches want in a guy. He can hit the gaps. He's really good in coverage. What we talked about, which is maybe his strong suit last year, is that he can be a really good coverage linebacker. The problem is with him is that he's not necessarily as cutthroat as I'd like, or like a true Mike. You think about Mike linebackers, like we talked about, gap destroyers, blah blah blah. Edgerrin Cooper to me does fit that bill. You watch him, and I just love every single interview I watched with Edgerrin Cooper. The guy can't wipe the smile off his face. He's so happy all the time. He's so happy to be talking about football. And don't get me wrong, man. If you gave me like a $3 million contract to play a game that I love, I'd be like, hey, what's up, man? Like, how's everything going? You know, I'd be ecstatic too. But I love the kid's energy. He just seems like he's such a good influence in the locker room. But also than that, like, I think that he is better than Quay Walker right out the starting gates. I really do. We talked about how his explosiveness, his ability to read defenses, his ability to read plays and kind of sift and sort himself into a position where he doesn't have to take on blocks. He just like evades blocks, which is a really good, like we talked, middle linebackers get lost in the shuffle a lot of times. We watched it last year consistently with Devondre Campbell, just not being able to, he would either take a bad angle or he'd take an angle where he gets blocked and he can't get off the block, or he's making contact 5 yards off the initial point of where he should be making contact. Like, I don't know, man. It's just good to see that we have young and up and coming talent between him, Quay, and McDuffie, and guys like Eric Wilson, who I think that don't get enough credit. Like, we do have a solid group there, so I'm not super upset.
Definitely. Chris Nichols in the chat said, what about Hopper? Not even on the board, I bet. He was 18th, the 18th best stack backer on my board. To put that into perspective, there was only 7 backers that were underneath him. Now, again, what did Goody see, right? And you can find the positives in this game. I'm sure you can find negatives. That's just where he sat on my board. Always put more value on Brian Gutekunst's evaluation than this dumb redneck right here. All right, that kind of goes without saying, but it is what it is. Coach Lynn says Anthony Johnson Jr. is still interesting to me as well. Tim loves him. Emilio's kind of big on him, if I remember correctly, too. I think the fact that it's kind of like Carrington Valentine, the fact that he saw so much playing time last year really says a lot. It says a whole lot about what they think about him. Doesn't matter what we think. What matters is, what does Matt LaFleur and more specifically Jeff Hafley think about these guys, and how are they going to deploy them? That's something that Greg Cosell talks about all the time is deployment. How do they fit in, right? Like Coach Lynn's saying, he looked good in OTAs, great blitzing linebacker. He said safety, not a linebacker, plays like a linebacker, though, talking about Evan Williams. When I see Evan Williams on tape, I immediately think Spurs safety. Spurs safety is what I think. All right. And let me do this. Let me just kind of to show you what I'm talking about with Spurs safety here. If this defense, like right here, this is the nickel 2-4-5. Now, keep in mind, we're going to be running nickel 4-2-5, but notice this guy's hands in the dirt, right? So this is technically 3 down linemen with an extra edge. Notre Dame runs a little bit of that. They refer to this defender as the Viper. Now, we're not going to get into all the cute little nicknames that every other coach comes up with, right? No, that's not a shot at you, Coach Lynn, all right? But you know how coaches, they love they're going to put their own spin on things.
Nomenclature.
Yeah. Imagine this is a nickel 4-2-5, okay? These are, like right here, let's imagine it's Preston Smith, Rashawn Gary. This would be Kenny, and let's say that's Devontae Wyatt, okay? So you see you got your 2 stack backers here. Obviously, this stack backer is, I believe it's Devondre Campbell, whoever it is. He's flexed out here. Coverage. Obviously, Quay Walker is lined up over the running back, whether it ends up being man coverage.
Okay, question. Why do you call them stack backers?
Okay, so like we refer to these guys as edge defenders, right? On our depth chart, they're called outside linebackers. Okay, so when people say, who are your linebackers on your team? Technically, last year, Rashawn Gary, Preston Smith, those guys were linebackers. But we don't see them as linebackers because they're constantly rushing the edge. So that's why they refer to them as edge defenders. When we say stack backers, the backers that are stacked behind the defensive line. See how these guys are stacked behind the defensive line?
Mm-hmm.
That's what we mean by stack backer, okay, which is traditional linebacker position. Because you can.
Who is
can
that? Who is the guy one down? So 1, 2, 3. Who's the
this guy?
5? Who's that? Yeah.
That is, to me, it looks like Keyshawn Nixon or Carrington. What is it?
So I was going to say that's your slot position. If I'm not
right. That's your slot corner. He's
slot corner. Okay. Okay. Without seeing the numbers, it's so hard for me to just by looking at it to know who's playing what, which I guess is the point, right? You're not supposed to really. Right. They're not wanting to give away what they're doing, but I get it. Yeah.
And what this looks like to me is the Chargers were in 11 personnel. They're just going Y flex. All right. So one running back, one tight end, and that tight end, the Y is flexed out into that kind of like a slot position there at receiver. Okay. That's why you've got backer out here on him. Like I said, Quay on the running back. There's your slot defender on their true slot. You got Ballantyne playing their, I guess that would be technically their X receiver. He's on the line of scrimmage opposite the Y. And then you've got, I think that's Carrington Ballantyne who would be covering the Z. Now, when we were talking about playing spur, there's no technical spur here, although you see how this safety is closer to the line of scrimmage than this safety, right? So he's the strong safety. The strong safety is always on the tight end side. Now, it's got to be very interchangeable. When we say spur, imagine this guy moved up into the box and him playing here. That's an old college term. So it almost acts as a third stack backer, but it's actually a safety, right? So when I say Evan Williams, what I see him as, I don't see him as much as a coverage safety, but more of that spur safety, if you will. Now, what Greg Cosell was talking about, what they may do with Bullard, because 2 years ago he played in the slot primarily for the Georgia Bulldogs, is they're saying that when we're in a nickel set, if he beats Keyshawn Nixon out for that slot corner position, we don't even know if there's a position battle there or not. I'm assuming they'll try it out. You would put Javon Bullard in that slot, and now Katana Ladapo would probably come in at safety, either him or Evan Williams or Anthony Johnson Jr. So when you say big nickel, you've still got 5 defensive backs on the field. Like right here, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But the difference is with big nickel, instead of this being a slot corner, we're going to replace him with a safety, and it would be Javon Bullard. So now you've got, even though you still got 5 DBs, that's technically nickel. It's called big nickel because the safety's in the slot, and you still got your other 2 safeties too. So it's essentially big nickel is a nickel 4-2-5 with 3 safeties is what it'll come out to be. So just want to point out that's what we mean by spur there, though. So, all right. So we hit on Xavier McKinney, Bullard, and Quay Walker. Anything else you guys want to hit on as far as the defensive side of the ball, Jacob? Anything at all that you want to cover? We're at the 40-minute mark. I know you're going to have to go here soon too. Carly, if you got any questions, comments, either. We got a Josh Jacobs clip we can hit on, but if you guys want to stay on defense, that's cool with me.
Have you ever experienced turbulence on a flight and wondered why?
And you can see all the terrain around you. You've got no issue with visibility or anything?
No, everything's PG.
Maybe you've sat on the tarmac for hours wondering why your plane isn't moving.
Well, we're outside here. They're saying the ramp is closed. They won't let us park because of Air Force One.
Listen in on the conversations between pilots and air traffic controllers on the Air Traffic Out of Control podcast.
510 Whiskey declaring an emergency. There's smoke in the cabin. I need to make a landing right now on 31 left.
We have the most interesting, wild, and funny ATC recordings you will ever hear. Check out Air Traffic Out of Control wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.
I got to run real quick here, but one thing I'll say is that I think, again, we're sleeping on the fact of the second-year jumps from, or I shouldn't say second year, but the next year jumps from LVN, Devontae Wyatt, Wooden, and Brooks. I really do think that those guys are going to take steps. Brooks specifically, Greg Cosell, like you talked about, said that he is one of those difference makers. I think there was an article I sent you that said that Brooks is one of the top 3, or top 3 or top 5 up and coming guys on the defensive line. I really do think people are sleeping on him. He wasn't a highly touted guy, really. He was more of like, I think his average draft position was projected somewhere between like the 4th and 5th round, and we got him right around there. And I I just think that the guy's going to be an absolute freak. So I would say between him and LVN, Enigbare, my guy Brenton Cox Jr., I mean, I really do think that the defense is about to explode. If Hafley can even get half the potential out of these guys, this room is set to absolutely explode. That being said, I got to jump off, but Carly, I will talk to you in the near future because I want to maybe get some fantasy football stuff going. So I want to talk to you about that. But that being said, go Pack Go. Guys, have fun tonight. I can't end Smitty. Hawk tour. That's all I'll say. I'm out of here.
All right, get out of here, Jake. All right. Carly, I think you were going to ask a question. Is that right?
Yeah, I was wondering, I'm still nervous about our run defense this year. Like, Edgerrin Cooper is really the biggest change that they've made to that, and I don't know, it's a lot of pressure. What are you thinking about our run defense and how we're going to handle that this year?
You know, everything that I've ever learned about run defense, former offensive linemen saying this, coaches I talked to, not in the league, but coaches just around the country. The 34 Jam is a run stopping defense. What's up? The 34
lay down.
The 34 Jam is a run stopping defense, and it's a 2-gap approach. You're basically putting 5 on the line of scrimmage. So when you go to a nickel, you go to a 4-3 front, you're playing 1 gap. You play 1 gap in a 4-3 front, and you got 3 stack backers. I've always been told it's easier to block a 4-3 front in the running game than a 34 Jam. So I guess what I'm saying, Carly, I'm nervous too. There's going to be times that these guys attack a gap or 1 gap with a 1-gap scheme, and they get in the backfield and make a tackle for a loss. But there's also going to be times that they rush right past the running back. That's going to happen. That's the give and take.
I mean, it happened last year too, a lot. So I don't know if it can get a whole lot worse.
I hope you're right, because that's the one thing that does kind of worry me a bit in that regard. So, yeah. All right, let's go back to the chat. We'll finish up in the chat here. We got several people. See, Coach Lynn said that's the point of having 3 safeties on the field at the same time. Big nickel can't tell what guy is doing what. Amen. They can't. It's way less predictable, if you will, right? Dick in Gulfport says, with this call, would you tighten anything up or would you change pre-snap? I'm assuming you're talking about what's on the screen here, Dick. And honestly, we don't know the down and distance. I just tried to grab a screen grab where rather than using little generic X's and O's, we could actually draw on the play, the all 22, if you will, of the Packers from last year. But even if you knew the down and distance, we also don't know. And Coach, I'm sure Coach Lynn can attest to this. We don't know what the coaching staff's seen specifically with the Chargers this week. From week to week, it varies. Meaning, typically what coaches will do is they'll take this team that they're playing this week and they'll do a 4-game saturation of tape. They'll go back and watch their previous 4 games that this team played. They'll also try to go find, if it's relevant, their previous 2 head-to-head matchups. Okay, so you got a 6-game saturation, 2 of which you actually played this team, this coach, this coordinator. Sometimes if it's a new coordinator, they'll actually try to go and find that coordinator's game tape from his previous stop and try to match it up that way. So what I'm saying is the Chargers in a 2x2 set here, as you can see, they're a 2x2 set with a single back out of the gun. With that 2x2 set, the Packers probably came out and said, okay, here's the 3, 4, maybe 5 route combinations they run the most. Here's the top 2 or 3 that they run the most. Let's call a defense to shut that down. So when we look at this and you ask the question, all right, what would you tighten up here? What would you do different? It depends on what the Chargers game tape showed, the previous 4-game saturation that they studied, right? Meaning there may be a scenario where if let's say that they run a lot of slot cross like us, right? Which slot cross concept is a climb with a backside dig, right? Well, in that scenario, what's the best way to cover that? The best way to cover that, in my opinion, would be to play a zone defense to where, again, if we draw that play out, there's 2 windows that they can attack, here and then here when it comes to that dig. As far as the crosser, there's a couple of different windows they can attack there. They're typically looking to attack here, and they're looking to attack here. So you want to make sure that you're defending that space if that's their top passing concept, right? So it may even be a match principle where if I were to line this up in blue, this guy's match principle may be, listen, don't let him cross your face. If you remember what Coach Haddad said, if and then, that's what zone match is. And what I mean by zone match is zone coverage turns to man coverage if they make a specific or a strategic move on the field, meaning it might be 7 yards down the field. In this case right here with this defender, maybe his key is 7 yards out, it turns into man coverage. That's the match aspect on the one. If the one goes more than 7 yards down the field, that now becomes man coverage. This one, it could have been if the 2 crosses your face, it becomes man coverage, meaning if he runs across her like you're seeing here. Now, you may even have a little hole shot here where you could have this backer drop back and play a little hole coverage to take away that first window, and that allows this defender to be able to undercut into the second window, right? There's just a lot that goes into zone match principles. So it's a long way to answer your question there, whoever it was that asked, Dick, but there's no way of telling what I would do different here because we don't know what their top 3 or 4 passing concept / route combinations are. We also don't know. It may have shown on tape that this team likes to run a draw out of a 2x2 set a lot. If that's the case, and that's what your scouting showed, then you would probably want to pull this back or this safety up in here, try to load the box, because you know most of the time on an early down in a 2x2 set, they like to run the draw, right? It just depends from week to week is the best way to answer that. Hopefully that answered your question, buddy. Slow 12 says Rashawn Gary, big season incoming. I think so too. We showed the clips last night where he looks so lean, man. That dude looks like he is ready to go. It looks like he dropped a little bit of weight. Now, why did he do that? Because he's going to be playing less 34 jam. Now, I don't have a 34 jam screen grab here, but if I did, what you would end up seeing here is you would have another defensive player, let's say right here, and this guy would be kicked out in this range, okay? So you'd have a 5-man front. Well, guess what happens there? This edge defender has to get out here and play a little bit of contain. He's got to be able to hold the point of attack and set the edge, right? In this 4-3 look, if this guy was a backer and he's up here, right on the line of scrimmage, you're now playing one gap. Gary's just going to fire off the ball and attack the edge, no matter what they do in the running game. You play the run to the passer, and now you got a stack backer that can play 2 gaps, a stack backer that can play 2 gaps, and another stack backer that can play 2 gaps. So these guys can be aggressive and rush upfield in their one-gap approach. You're going to see more tackles for a loss this year in the running game. Let's hope it doesn't. The downside to that isn't more explosive plays on the ground. Now, the numbers would suggest Robert Saleh had less explosive plays that they gave up last year, which in the running game, I think that's runs of 12 yards or more. In the passing game, it's passes of 20 yards or more. All 3, if I remember correctly, the Jets, the Niners, and the Texans, DeMeco Ryans Texans, obviously coming from San Francisco. We know the ties of all 3 of these teams. We think that's probably going to be the type of defense that Hafley runs. They had less explosives than the Packers did last year. So that's a good sign that, okay, we're going to try to control the explosives. Hopefully we got the personnel to do it. And I think that's why Goody was so aggressive in the offseason, get the players he did. But, yeah, I agree. I think Rashawn Gary could have a huge season. So that's pretty much all I got, Carly. Is there anything else you want to hit on? Any questions, comments, anything like that before we hop off here? We're at the 50-minute mark right now. You're muted. Sorry, Carl. You're muted.
Dang it. No, not at the moment. I'm excited for the season to get started and see these guys play, but I know they need their time to, get everything going. And I'm excited for the changes I've seen in the off season with, like you said, Rashawn Gary just getting even more fit and cut, and it's going to be a great season. I'm really excited.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's we're not really going to know. I say we're not going to know. I try not to judge stuff until a quarter through the season. I like to break the season down in quarters. So after 4 or 5 games, I look up and go, okay, where are they in the rankings as far as points per play, yards per play? Those are the 2 things that matter the most for me on defense. And then I try to focus on the tape and go, okay, what are we in the most? when we're playing 11 personnel, what does our nickel look like? Are we playing big nickel? Are we playing regular nickel? Are we trying to overload blitz? Are we just rushing 4? All those things are the answers I try to get early in the season. And that's when you can really get to the point where it's okay. You kind of understand their philosophical approach to how Hafley's going to play defense. Now, here's what's crazy. You get a quarter of the way through the season, people got tape on that. You have a whole team within your building that's self-scouting as well. And they're basically watching your tape and going, hey, here's where you're becoming predictable. So you try to change things up. That's why it's so hard to beat the same team twice in the league, is because not only do they have the game tape on you, but as a coaching staff, if you just boat race the Bears, right, which is pretty common for the Packers, let's just be honest. If you boat race the Bears and then you come out the next time you face them, you've got a choice to make. Do we do what we did last time that was really successful? Or do we change it up because we know full well they know exactly what we were doing that was successful? That's where it becomes chess. So Chicago may come out and go, okay, last time they did this to us, here's how we attack that, right? And as a coaching staff from a defensive perspective, you got to make a decision. Do we change it up or do we keep it the same? And that's where it gets to be pretty tough. Man, that's what makes the league so great, though, is the fact that all 32 teams have to share game tape. There's no secrets. There's nothing hidden. Everybody's got the tape on each other, and it makes it that much more competitive. I absolutely love that. So let's see. Dick in Gulfport said, wow, great answer, Clayton. My first thought was bring the safeties up, but you really did a great analyzation. So, yeah, and like I think it was Smitty pointed out in here, that is a first down marker, right? You've got a first down marker down here. You can see at the bottom of the screen right there. And so it is a 1st and 10. You can see where the chains are at. So maybe they were playing a little too soft here. But again, just like I said, the scouting report may have said, hey, they like to run a draw a lot out of a 2x2 set. The true scouting report also could have said they only run a running play out of a 2x2 set out of the gun, 12% of the time, 15% of the time. If that's the case, just play back. Don't worry about the run, right? Let's shut down their top route combinations, their passing concepts. So that could have been the case too, right? But without knowing, it's just that we don't know. So
hey Clayton, do you think, so based on what you've seen with Hafley and everything, do you think that they're going to be a little bit more responsive this year as far as being able to adjust when it seems like we've gotten, like, other teams have gotten the read on us? I know it's mostly like for offense, but even for defense, like I felt like we were bogged down last season where things would just go so slow and we'd wait too long before shifting techniques or strategies. What do you think about that?
I would disagree with that. I would say that's not what I've seen. It doesn't mean I'm right. But I would be,
well, compared to me and my knowledge, it does mean you're right.
I mean, I would be fabricating an answer if I said, yeah, I seen that too. I just didn't see it. What I seen was quite the opposite. I seen some games they would start off in what we call this shell right here, right? Where you got kind of too deep. This guy's semi-deep. It's not really technically shell unless he bails out there. And then you go, okay, that's what they were getting at. But what I seen was the opposite. Like the Giants game, everybody was so frustrated with the Giants game. It's soft defense. But the reality is, if you'll go back and watch it, the game-winning play in most of the fourth quarter, we showed it on Chalk Talk. We showed it on the Rewind. We were giving up explosive plays because we were playing too aggressive. And what I mean by that is we had Keyshawn Nixon. You see how far off Keyshawn is right here, right? We had Keyshawn up here playing press on the number 2. And that big play, if you'll remember, let's just pretend this is Keyshawn right here, okay? It's actually Dre, but let's pretend that's Keyshawn. And that play, we actually had Key up here, and he was playing press. Well, this guy bends inside and then done a double move outside and completely scorched Keyshawn. He gained like 40 yards and put him automatically in field goal position. Now, the way I like to see defense played, and it's why I was kind of that Fangio fan, because you control explosives, is make them attack you underneath the shell. Because at that point in the game, the clock is the opponent. Right. You want that clock to, if they had played shell and kept everything in front of them, they probably would have been attempting a 50-yard field goal instead of a 30-yard chip shot. But because we played aggressive up front, he was able to burn him on that double move, put him in field goal range. And essentially that's how you lost to the Giants. Now, people will say, no, what about the Carrington Valentine play a couple plays before where he was playing way back here on that number 1? and allowed him to get a quick play outside. Everybody in the sports media, and there is no exceptions. Everyone was like, "This, can't believe they're playing that soft." It comes out in the press conferences that what happened was everyone else was playing like 3 to 4 yards up further than this guy who was playing like back here. And the problem was he didn't get the call from the opposite sideline. So he just, and that's where Joe Barry said he did the right thing. He didn't have the call. The last thing you want to do is go, crap, I didn't get the call. Let me get up here and get burned deep. Right. So I kind of felt like it was different. And again, we showed you the numbers. We showed, everything where everyone thinks that we were just playing this shell where it was just, we're playing quarters, which would essentially be quarter zone, this guy, quarter zone. Everyone was anytime you've seen this shell look right here. What I mean by shell is these two safeties deep. They thought we're in quarters coverage, and that was not it. 5th most in the league. We played single high where this guy, right, that whether you're in a cover 3 or this is actually cover 1 man, right? We were actually drifting into the box. We were playing cover 1 robber or cover 1 hole, and we were also playing a lot of cover 3 zone match. And that's why it was, I'm sure you guys caught on. The whole season I was so frustrated hearing fans talk about, I was just like, you guys, you're not even paying attention to what they're actually running. They're showing a pre-snap shell, but they're actually playing single high. They played single high or middle field close, 5th most in the league. So that's more aggressive approach than the Fangio quarter zone match principle. If that makes sense. So
yeah, it does. Thank you.
Yeah. So there we go. Yeah, you got that. God, did he? Angus McAgott. The DeVito scrambles hurt us too. And you'll notice too, Gary's numbers were excellent all year long, right? Like up to the DeVito game, Gary played pretty well lights out. What happened in the DeVito game? They were rushing way upfield. And what DeVito would do is he would just do his drop, step up in the pocket, then scramble. He'd let that guy rush right by him every time, right? And they were doing it on both sides of the – after that, what you notice was Gary stopped with the outside moves, and I think that's what he was coached up to do, and he started doing that push-pull and work around the edge where you're kind of pressing the pocket in as opposed to, rushing around the edge. So that's kind of what I noticed there. I think that's what happened with DeVito. We were rushing upfield too far, and that allowed him to scramble the way he did. Now, he had a dime piece in the back corner of the end zone, too. He threw that ball on the run. That was, as he was doing last year, that was, it was a beautiful throw. Now, he's out of a job now, so some people would say that Joe Barry gave him more of a chance than he actually deserved. But anyway, we're not going to continue to beat that dead horse. So, Randy Cleaver says that's going to be a totally different defense this year. What I think you're going to see less of is what's on the field here. You're going to see less pre-snap shell. I think they're going to allow him to play fast. So I think if rather than the safety, late rotation into the box, I think he's going to be down here waiting. I think everybody's going to get pretty well lined up. It doesn't mean they won't sugar in the second half of the season, but starting off, I think it'll be that way. Now, as far as it's going to be way different, Randy, look at the numbers. The main thing, this is what's hilarious about the whole situation, is the Packers ran a lot less 4-man rush than the Jets did, than the Niners did. The Jets and the Niners tried to apply pressure with a 4-man rush. Isn't it funny that we said Barry was too conservative? He wasn't aggressive. And the reality was we were actually bringing 5 and 6 more than the teams that had a lot of success. And the main reason was because they were winning up front with those front 4. So, but I'm with you. It's going to look a lot different. There's no doubt about it. Just the personnel alone, That's why I was joking about Barry's got to be pissed off because he looks up and he got, okay, you went and got the best safety in the league in free agency. You spent 3 draft picks on safeties. You let Savage go, who was obviously a bust. You let Devondre Campbell go, who obviously busted out the last 2 years in a bad way. You made all these moves, kicked Barry out the door, and it's like, I bet Barry's sitting back like, well, I'd like to have had Xavier McKinney last year instead of Darnell Savage. So, nonetheless, it's all in the past now. All right, yeah, there you go. Ron Sample hit it. Mostly different because of new, better players. As Coach Belichick says, players win them and coaches lose them, right? It's definitely a players' league. So, all right, we're going to get out of here. We're at the hour mark. Carly, it was good to see you. It's been a long time. Glad to have you.
Yeah.
Hope the family is doing good. And, we look forward to chatting ball with you again here real soon. So,
awesome.
All right. We're out of here. We will see you guys tomorrow morning. We may do a college football pod. If not, we'll do another PTA. I'm trying to look at the numbers to see if it's worth it to continue to do the college football pod because some people like it. The people who like it, they absolutely love it. But the numbers would suggest it's not as popular as PTA, and we definitely want to give you listeners and viewers what you want. So we'll try to make a decision on whether we're going to do a college pod in the morning or a PTA. But there'll definitely be 2 shows tomorrow, one in the morning, one in the evening. So thank y'all so much for hanging out with us. For those of you listening on the pod, thank you for making us a part of your day. As always, let's go out and be the change we want to see in the world. Go Pack, go.
The power sweep actually is the lead play in our offense. We ask our YN or a tight end to open up somewhere between 6 feet and 9 feet, get an isolation with the linebacker. We tell the tackle to take the defensive end if he's over him. If he's not, to drive down on the first man to his inside. If the YN has the linebacker taken out, he cuts inside. If the YN has the linebacker in, he comes all the way around. If you look at this play, what we're trying to get is a seal here and a seal here, and try to run this play in the alley.